Welcome to Triple Threat, the podcast with Jamel President, where it's good news and good vibes all the time, baby.
When we left Portugal to come play with you in your system, Jamel, it was the best thing for Shane because you pushed him to do other things outside his box.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Jamel President and on Twitter at President Jamel. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast as I'll be bringing you a new interview every month. Hey, what's up, guys? Coming up next, we got Steve Harris. Steve was a great student athlete. And in our conversation, something that stuck out to me was, when most athletes transition or decide to change schools, it's usually because of lack of playing time or not familiar with coaching styles or what have you. But Steve's transition was because of education. In his view, he felt education was way more important than athletics. And that's very important, which is very true as well. So let's hear more about Steve and talking about student athlete, education, and just making sacrifices. Let's get into the interview. So again, in our previous conversation, this is the Triple Threat podcast. And what we do here is we try to educate potential student athletes and families on just how to get to the next level. And we do that by using the voices of former student athletes, people that transition into business, transition to successful lives after, their career. So thank you for coming on and giving us your wealth of knowledge.
I'm honored to be here. Thanks for the invitation. And I've listened to some of the previous ones. So very, very good work. So I'm excited to be also a part of this.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Steve. So, starting out, I think it's important to we always let the audience know where our guests are from, because that's huge in the development process of what were your support system, your exposure to the game of basketball per se. So take us back to the Parks and Rival days, where you're from, and tell us about that.
Well, first of all, I have to say that I'm from a small town in Fountain Inn, South Carolina, which is essentially part of the Greenville, Spartanburg area in the upstate of South Carolina.
Okay.
And I was, my mother had me when she was in high school. So my mother had 9 other siblings. And so I lived with my mother, her siblings, and my grandparents. And just a quick note on that. So I was the youngest in the household. And so by being the youngest, there was a hierarchy of things that happened in the household. And don't want to bore you with all the details, but simply put, I was the last one to receive anything. Right. And from food to anything that was brought into the household, I was the last person to get that. Right. And I will also share with you that I have uncles and aunts that were very talented in high school. As I started to grow, started to start school myself.
Right.
And they're very talented. And I wanted to be a part of some of those things, specifically basketball. And so I was 7 years old. I'll never forget this. And I wanted to play basketball because my uncles played basketball with me at home and at the local park.
Right.
And it was time to sign up for the recreation department. And they took me there and they said, a 7-year-old cannot play basketball. We don't have a league for a 7-year-old to play basketball. So I cried and cried, tried to find a way to play, even though I was 7, and I couldn't play because it was a rule.
Right.
The following year, though, we pushed, and I was 8, and I was able to play with the 9 and 10-year-olds. And what I recall from that was, I think I scored 2 or 4, 6 points, maybe, I don't remember, in the entire season.
Mm.
But I was hungry,
Mm.
even a season before that.
Mm.
And it was because I was playing and my uncles gave me exposure to the game. It was because I was the last one to receive anything in my household. So that hunger and that edge was instilled in me just because
Mm.
I was last.
Mm.
And I didn't want to be last forever. And so I think that spearheaded a lot of hunger and desire, and wanting to knock down the barriers of you can't do this because you're not old enough,
Mm.
and things of that nature. So this is going to be a common thread throughout my life, and it's all the way back to someone telling me no because I'm not at that age. And so what I can tell you that my uncles would take me to the park, at 6, 7, and 8 years old, and play with me and treat me like an adult. Said, if you want to play with me, you're going to
Right.
play the game correctly.
Right.
And I would tell you, they wouldn't allow me to shoot the basketball.
Wow.
I had to play defense.
Right.
You can hustle, you can scrap, get the loose balls, but you're not worthy enough. You haven't earned the right to shoot the ball. And I mean, again, this was some hard, tough learning, but I also think it was right. So you got to prove it. You got to prove your worthiness. You got to earn your time, earn your
Right.
keep. And you know how it was back then.
Definitely.
If you lost the game on the court, you
You
know how
might not
long
get-
it was going to be before you play again?
You might not get back on the rest of the day.
Exactly. And so what happened was I was scrappy little Steve, I'd rebound and throw it back out to my uncles, who, by the way, could fill it up. I
Right.
mean, they still think they can play, but back then they could play. And so we had a name that we were playing for,
Gotcha.
Harrisville at the park, and we had a left-handed point guard, and we had a guy down low, and these guys were really good. And we had one guy who was 5'7". I think he played in the military, and even up until a couple of years, we go to the gym. I mean, they leave him alone, he'll fill it up. And so, but we all had roles,
Right.
and they were defined by the elderlies in our family, because they knew that it was going to be a long time before we played again if we lost. But if I was going to be on the court with them, I had to play defense, rebound, and get steals.
And let me ask you a question. And you talk about, playing with your uncles or whatnot. You transfer that to the game as far as the rec department. What type of support, in the community were there? Were there like good, just the environment of the rec department? And what was their role into your success of being a good athlete? Because they got some situations where the rec departments, like you say, some don't have programs because of their ages, but some don't have programs at all because there's just no community interest. How important was the rec department programs allowing you to exercise your game and feed that hunger, as you continue to develop?
And again, this is a very small town in South Carolina, and a gentleman by the name of Roger Terry, his name is PD, and many listeners are going to know this name. He's legendary. A part of the city is named after him and
Wow.
Emmanuel Sullivan.
Wow.
And so not a lot of resources in terms of funding, but very loving, very willing to work with people who wanted it. And I mean, I know for a fact, there are times that we were late in paying for our registration to play the sports. And in fact, I worked sometimes with him to pay for
Wow.
shoes, to pay for registration. And again, so they were welcoming us. Those that were wanting to be a part of a program and hungry, they would do anything they possibly could to ensure that we were able to play. And the facilities were not very great.
Mm,
And that's the other thing I like about this. It wasn't air-conditioned gymnasiums.
mm,
It was one gym or a couple of gyms at different elementary schools that we played at, and and we didn't care. We were just hungry, and
right.
so the support system was there for those who what we called kept their nose clean and
Mm.
was doing the right thing and was respectful. People will open their arms and try to do what they can to ensure that we had a chance to participate in a recreational sport.
That's awesome. So take us back to when the young Steve is playing in the rec department, and then things starting to click where, the high school freshman, take us back to those times where, you're starting to get into as a freshman in high school. Who were some of your rivalries, people you had to beat out or just, go against in order to earn those spots coming in as a freshman in high school basketball?
Well, I have to say, one of the things that sort of spearheaded that was summer in middle school. So I did play with a coach. He's a legendary gentleman in the Simpsonville area by the name of Dan Pike. And we had an old mill gym that we practiced in for the entire summer. And his philosophy was, you would shoot a medicine ball up against the wall, you would play defense, you would use the backboard on every layup, unless you're dunking the ball. You would make two-hand passes, catch the ball with two hands, and you play both ends of the court. And so if you didn't do those things, you wouldn't play.
Wow.
But the thing that we liked the most about that interaction was we practiced all summer and only played in a couple of AAU tournaments. And I say that to stress that we practiced all summer and played in two tournaments.
Exactly.
Whereas most people are playing every weekend.
Exactly.
And practicing very little, which arguably they might be developing the wrong habits or not allowing themselves time to work on those skills development areas. And so what happened was Sean Golden, myself, who, by the way, he went on to become Mr. Basketball in South Carolina, and so did I. Everett Sullivan was a parade All-American. Hal Henderson, Bruce Evans also played. They all played Division I basketball. We all came through the same program. And the discipline and the structure was we were going to work on our skill, our craft, and 80% of the time and play 20% of the time. So I did that, and I got a lot of recognition in this one tournament in Kentucky as a middle schooler. I made the all-tournament team with 4 other gentlemen that went on to play in the NBA. And I didn't get a chance. Well, I didn't have that opportunity to play in the NBA, but my name was amongst Kendrick Warren, Damon Bailey, Greg Minor, some of those names, Eric Montross. I was part of that all-tournament team, and Penny Hardaway.
Wow.
And, so that gave me a lot of confidence. I had a couple big tournaments like that I did exceptionally well. So now it's a matter of going to high school and not, it wasn't a matter of me playing ninth grade or JV. It was a matter of how much time when I get as a freshman in high school.
For sure.
And so if I had to go back, I'd say the key was, those early habits as a elementary school in terms of playing with my uncles and playing in rec and then playing in middle school, but practicing more than playing, having a great couple of showings in tournaments. And then, as I know, as a ninth grader, I was number 7 in rotation, or the second person off the bench on a high school team that was number 4 in the nation my sophomore year.
And I'm gonna drive a point before we continue is that, and just for confirmation, not blowing my own tune, but we do it the right way in our foundation. Where we have our travel teams, we start practice in February. We don't play a game until like maybe the last weekend in May or first weekend in April, right? So we learn, and then we only have 5 tournaments, and depending on the level of competition, we're a 5th grade or middle school, we stay in state. we don't travel all over the world. There's no sense to travel to Florida, North Carolina, spending hotel costs, gas money, and then you get beat by 20 and you still haven't developed. If you can get beat by 20, then make sure it's home where you can learn and develop. And the parents are not mad at you for spending all this money. So again, I want to second that thought. This is an old school concept that some of these organizations are not taking advantage of how to do it correctly. It's a playcation. It's a vacation playcation for them where they can go and travel and just play games. And the more games, the more money, right? But
Correct.
The kids are being duped because they're not really developing that way by just playing. So I just wanted to drive that home, second you with that. And this time our message, we got Travis Smith.
When I got to Mercer, it was they were 500 just on that line the last 3 years. And so the coach made this pitch to me. You know how recruiting is, like, hey, see, you can do this, this, and this, and feeling like this. And so we had 2 7-footers. We had a point guard that was pretty solid, really, really solid. I shouldn't say pretty solid. He was really solid. I was a combo, and we just had size. For a mid-major school, we had a lot of size. And so I filled into a role where I could just be up and I could play my game smoothly. I could hook guys up when I needed, 4 points when I needed to. So in both of those years, my first year, I probably averaged like 9 points, right at 10. Then my second year, I was the team leading scorer, and we took down some big-time teams, went to the NIT.
Now let's get back to the interview. When you're talking about getting your high school and career, we always talk about recruitment because, like you said, our interview always start about the support system, who always there to give you that extra, just the extra support in what you want to do. And when we're talking about recruiting wars, take us back to high school when you started playing and then you start getting letters and when things started to really make sense. So like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go here. When does that start? When Steve Harris starting to come into his own in high school?
Well, so when I think about the work ethics that were put in before high school, as I just tried to touch upon in the discipline, I have to give the shout out to the coaches and my teachers because they all saw me as someone with great potential, and they see kids today with great potential, but I think they saw that I had a willingness to learn and grow and develop based off their coaching to me, either a student or an athlete. And so I want to give a shout out to my English teacher, Kathy. And I was on the honors wing in high school as a 9th grader, being a 9th grader for other reasons.
For sure.
Kathy, she's maybe 5'1" at best in height, but the most intimidating teacher I've ever had. She asked me why was I on the wing, and I told her because I was just walking through, and long story short, I ended up being in her honors English class, being the most challenged I'd ever been. I still talk to her to this day. My daughter has met her because she has had just as much influence on my development as an athlete because she's a coach, she's a teacher in education. So I say that because, I have Talmadge Gray, who's my high school coach, and he's also, I believe we're distant cousins. And so he also had just a great impact on my basketball development. So I had the best of both worlds, with coaches and teachers that cared dearly about me as an individual, but also challenged me. And whatever they said to me, I didn't question it or doubt it. I tried to do it and implement. It made me a better writer. It made me a better student. It made me a better basketball player and a better citizen. So in the game of basketball, you haven't heard me talk a lot about, dribbling and using shot fakes and things of that nature. But, I learned to take the coaching and try to apply the things that they're trying to give me to help me be successful and do them. And it worked exceptionally well for me.
For sure, for sure. What why'd you choose Clemson coming out of high school?
Well, we went to Clemson basketball camps as like in middle school, I believe, so we knew Tree Rollins, we knew the names, Larry Nance,
right.
We knew the name. We'd go over to Clemson. I believe Roger Terry, my recreation department head leader, was a big Clemson fan. So he'd take us over, we watch games, and so plus it's ACC.
Right.
It's local to me. It's less than an hour from my mother, my father, my parents. I mean, my grandparents, my uncles, my entire family could drive over to see me play. And I had a dream of wanting to make Clemson more than just a football school, but also a competitive basketball program in the ACC.
For sure.
So that's why I chose Clemson.
For sure. Were there any other schools recruiting you at that time, or how did you, were there any other schools recruiting you, or did you just wanted really just to go to Clemson?
So I really excelled. I got a lot of recognition my sophomore year in high school, and so my junior year, excuse me. I started to play the game at a very high level.
Well, Steve, one thing I know you humble. I know, it's been a long time since we played, but I'm building up to something because, we don't like to talk about, because for the audience, it's been Mr. Basketball 2 years, right? You spent 2 years in Mr. Basketball.
1 year. Yeah.
1 year. 1 year. But still, BJ Mackey, Kevin Gardner, they're just major guys I want to be Mr. Basketball South Carolina. So my point is, I'm trying to get to a point where you dominated the high school level, right? And I'm looking at the stats here, and I'm just trying to understand about, student athletes, when they pick colleges based on, what they like or what their comfort is, but not necessarily the coach's style of play or what position they're going to be in. Because if you're a forward and you're a freshman coming in and they just sign a forward, well, that could be a conflict when it comes to playing time and, your performance on the court. So I see that, when you went to Furman, you did a whole 11-point jump from 4 points to 15 points from the freshman in Clemson to your senior year at Furman. So do you think the style of play was really holding you back, or was the maturation from you growing from a freshman to a senior? And I say that when you answer this question about kids picking schools and how to pick schools. So kind of just frame that situation for me.
Well, I say it's all about the culture, the environment, and my development as an individual and a basketball player. So at Clemson, you got the ACC, and again, we've got, I was looking at some old footage and against North Carolina, Duke won the national championship back-to-back my freshman and sophomore year at Clemson. Wow. And even at Clemson, we had 4 guys in the NBA, and we were the bottom of the ACC. That is how talented the league was at that time.
It's crazy.
And so just to be on the court competing as a freshman, by the way, I started as a freshman and as a sophomore at Clemson. And, so I was progressive. Now, we always can look back and say, if you woulda, coulda, shoulda, if you had stayed at Clemson. Even my Uncle Willie, he always was like, if you stayed at Clemson, you had a chance to be a Greg Buckner, and because I had similar body styles, basketball games.
Right.
But, I made a transition to Furman, which is in Greenville, South Carolina. And the irony of this is that Clemson was very athletically, or basketball was very challenging for me because it's the highest level, as you recall, at this time. The ACC was by far the best basketball league to play in.
For sure.
I matched up against Hubert Davis. He's coaching in the NCAA championship a couple weeks ago.
Right.
played together on the court, guarded each other for a couple of games. And so, but I chose to go to Furman for a different reason that was other than basketball. And I guess the story here is that reason was similar to my high school teacher that said, "What am I doing on this wing?" You know, so she challenged me from an educational standpoint. And so I left Clemson only because I wanted a different challenge. Basketball was a big challenge for me. It was a Furman is a smaller school. They didn't even care that I played basketball at Furman. And so I did go on to make all tournament team. I was the co-captain of actually at Clemson as a sophomore, and then a junior at Furman and a senior at Furman. So my claim is that not only did I do the thing right on the court, but also off the court. And I was a co-captain for 3 of the 4 years that I played basketball in D1 in college. So that's so I look back and I say that made me the more complete person. Is the athletic and the academics.
For sure. Looking back, moving into the afterlife of college per se, and we'll talk about because we talked briefly about the jump rope and how that connectivity with sports and just people in general. How have high school sports and collegiate sports helped you to maintain every day, to be successful in life for your careers? How have those things you learned from being on time, the discipline? What are some things that you've learned through sports that has helped you maintain in life?
Yeah, number one is there's no I in the word team, and what that means is when you sign up to put a jersey, your sneakers on, or anything, or if you're a part of a group, an organization, and in order to help the team have the best chance of performing the best or winning, then you have to do more than what is asked of you as an individual. And I people say they want to win. I think most people want to win, but are you carrying more than your share of weight to help the team win? That was my mentality. And let me explain that to you a little bit in basketball language. So yes, I put up 26 points, averaged almost 10 rebounds a game, probably had 4 or 5 assists, but also had like 3 steals. And I played both ends of the court. And I wasn't just the shooter, just the rebounder, just the passer, just the defender. I want to play the entire game. I wanted to give more than what the coaches actually expected of me. And that was my mentality, because if I could do what they asked me to do, but exceed their expectation, then I'm going to be on the court, I'm going to be recognized, and I'm going to be one of the top players.
Good point. So talk to us about, 2 things that we both hit on that agreed on involves development. And the second thing is jump rope. When I'm training my athletes, before we start, the first thing we do, I have them do 60 each legs, where we go 10, 10, 10, 10, just single legs. And then we do regular of 1 minute just to get warmed up. And you'll be surprised. It doesn't matter the age. You can take a 10-year-old kid or a 14-year-old kid. If they never jumped rope before, it's the funniest thing you ever seen in your life, right? Because it looked like they're going to fall. They just have no coordination, no timing. So I understood that before I started, seeing what you do. And I want you to tell the audience about how did you make that connectivity with jumping rope and what it also does for the body and the mind.
Real quickly, believe it or not, I was a shy kid, in kindergarten, and I had a teacher that was really passionate about the American Heart Association. So she raised a lot of money for that through jumping, skipping rope. And I did it. People used to laugh at me, that you can imagine some of the names they called me for. Hey, you jump rope? Oh man, you have the tight shorts and the high socks and you're doing double dutch and jumping rope. That's kind of silly. Well, that silliness assisted my basketball skills.
Mm.
I was able to, and even now, I'm 6'4", 215, exactly the same height I was in college. And I can dunk almost with both hands still.
Wow.
So I developed that strength and coordination and balance from jumping rope. That was incredible.
Mm.
And the other thing that I think that goes unrecognized, yes, it's a discipline, but also rhythm is hugely important in everything that we do, not just music.
Mm.
And what I learned at a very high level, and I still have this, is incredible rhythm.
Mm.
So my body is syncing, my brain, my head, my shoulders, my arms, my feet, they're all synchronized together. That's why I can skip rope and start, putting myself off balance, so to speak, off one leg and doing crosses and things of that nature. So I'm able to move more laterally and vertically. And so the short of that is I also broke high school records and county records and was third in the state in the high jump. And I only jumped in 3 track meets ever.
The most important message to get across to student athletes suffering from mental health issues is that you're not alone. Many student athletes deal with depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and other mental health struggles. If this is the case, speak to someone like a counselor, a parent, a trusted adult, or your fellow teammate. Adults who are supporting a student athlete should be aware of the signs. A student athlete who is experiencing mental health difficulties might have constant fatigue, loss of appetite, mood swings, apathy, or even declining grades and/or social isolation. A student athlete's mental health can be severely affected by an injury. An athlete's entire life becomes about their sport. And when they lose the ability to play, it can take a huge toll mentally. As we continue to reduce the stigma around mental health, hopefully more middle and high school level student athletes will feel confident discussing their health, whether it be mental or physical. The Triple Threat podcast will be adding a psychology aspect in season 2. We will be doing our part to help destigmatize mental health when it comes to student athletes. So subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform so you never miss an episode. Now let's get back to the interview.
So I have something here that if anyone is interested in knowing about, I like to share it with you. And I'm 50 years old and I can jump rope like nobody's business. And I just told you, I'm 6'4", 215. So it doesn't hurt me if you know how to do it. But also in terms of confidence, jumping rope is the weirdest thing for the brain. It actually improves cognitive function. So if you watch someone who's trying to do a trick or a skill, they can't do it. But then when they get it, it goes from a bit of frustration to a face of incredible satisfaction and feeling.
Yes.
So it's something about the adrenaline that gives you that feeling when you're bouncing and you're moving your entire body. And that's why I say rhythm, because last time I checked, when you watch people dance, they aren't frowning, they're smiling. So if you're jumping and you're doing something with a little bit of impact, you're like grooving, and it's just a wonderful thing. So it's a full body, including the mind workout that I believe if you're 2 to 82, there's some things that you can do with a jump rope that can still give you that boost of confidence and cognitive function, balance, stability, and rhythm. And who couldn't benefit for enhanced rhythm and balance?
You're right on point. And like I said, with my kids, the muscle memory, because they'll go in the first week, they're doing it and they just can't do it. They can't get it. Then by the second week, it's coming. By the third, fourth week, they're doing it better than they did the first week. So that connection, that connection with the mind, the body, muscle, because you're talking to yourself. You have to be relaxed. You can't jump rope frustrated or rushing, right? You have to, like you said, it's a rhythm. It's a timing, moving that body weight and structure. So I think it's a great thing. And I'll be doing that a little bit more myself as I, continue, because it's helpful for my kids, but I know personally I can implement it more on my end. You made a good point when you talk about confidence and the cognition of athletes, and you talked about you being a shy kid when you were younger. Then you talk about you being hungry and wanting to get on the court. One thing I want to talk to you about is this, a new stigma is called we're talking about mental health and student athletes, right? So here's a situation where I want to get your input, where you can take yourself, for instance, where when you're hungry, you didn't get to play a 7-year-old, you played your eighth grade, but then you kept that same drive because you never wanted to be last again. Had you not overcame those things, do you think it would have been a mental breakdown for you personally? And do you think the mental toughness has been kind of taken away from our society? Because, back in the days, we had something going on. The coach said, stick your head, go get through it, fight through it. And those things happen, but are we still dealing with that eternally? So I just want to get your take on that, since it's now starting to come up, this word mental health in student athletes.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. And so it was available then, it's available now, and mental health is going to be even more present in the future. But what I think you asked that I think is very key is the support system, and the caring, the love, and being surrounded by people that care. And, so although my family I had the worst piece of chicken in the house because I was the youngest, which is actually true, but they fed me. But also, if I wanted to play cards with my uncles and aunts, I had to, they were not going to allow me to win. And they beat me. And I actually cried a few times because I was like, oh my gosh, they're giving me all the hearts and we're playing, hearts, and, and so, but they loved me too after that. And I think that's life. We all have things that, are times when things won't go our way, but who do you go to? Are you able to communicate that and show your emotions, and then have somebody to care for you and put their arms around you and say, hey, that's okay. You can get it next time. Just keep working on it. So those are the things that I have. And so that's, I think right now we have a lot of isolation, not only with adolescents, but with people in general. And so when we're isolated, then we don't necessarily feel the love and the care for at times, which could play against our psyche. And so it is a challenging environment right now. And I guess if the one thing that I like to say is like talk to people, text people, make sure you're reaching out. And that's both the coach and the coachee, right? To make those touch points on an individual basis instead of a group text or an email. I think those things are ginormously important, even in the workplace. If you want to really get to know the people that work with you, talk to them one-on-one versus an email that's going to everybody. So I think those things are important. And again, sometimes the game is not the most important thing, but the mental health and where you are as a person and what's going on with you are equally important. And that's what I would advocate in school systems right now. In Minnesota, I'll just say this real quick, they were striking for several weeks. There was a strike. So who were disadvantaged? The kids.
Right.
They bring them back, and then you want to throw a bunch of books and try to catch up on the content. That's not the answer.
Right.
Mentally, we need to make sure they're mentally and physically ready to take on a subject. And so that's why I'm advocating something like skipping rope or basketball, a program like that, because they'll do it better when they're engaged and excited, and it's just proven. So that's my take on mental health. it's about connecting with the people and trying to understand them, because we all are going through challenges and we'll continue to go through them. And it's how we cope with them that's most important.
I totally agree. Looking at, I'm sure you're looking at the NCAA games and looking at the pro games as well. What are some things you see that athletes, we all know what they're doing well, but what do you think that as a cohesive unit, high school athletes per se, what are they missing? What are they missing from the game?
Well, I can tell you what they have that I missed, that I didn't have. I mean, I think they have a lot more accessibility to many types of players, things that you could do, some of the ahas, ooh, wow, did you see that? But I think those can be distractions too. And the way that I look at this is not just about basketball, I'm sorry, but I look at it from a skill development standpoint. Anytime, anything, any skill that you're wanting to develop, you tell me, is it better to do it fast or to do it slow and gradually work your way up so that you can do it faster? Why did I use that example? So we call it the layup versus the three-pointer. And that's one of the reasons why I don't coach is because everyone wants to go to the three-point line before they make a layup. And I watch data. I have an analytical mind, and I would challenge any listener that's playing basketball to look at the score box at the end of the game and tell me how many baskets were made from the free throw line inside the paint versus made behind the three-point line. And I would guarantee you that the majority of the games won are in the paint, which means score inside closer,
high percentage.
With a higher percentage, you're giving your team a really good chance to win.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
He made a name for himself as a star for the College of Charleston basketball teams in the mid to late 90s. And now, Jermel President is doing what he can to make sure that the Charleston area kids have a chance to succeed on the court and in life.
So I want to, give some of that back to the community as well. After college and after playing professionally, I started the Day Foundation just to be that wealth of knowledge to the kids in the community and parents as well.
College of Charleston Hall of Famer Jermel President said he saw a need for this while he was in school. So he founded the nonprofit Day Foundation. And its philosophy for success is based on what he calls his oatmeal recipe.
Let's go and finish together.
Basically teaches the game of basketball, focusing on skills development, nutrition, and education. Not only SAT, ACT type stuff, but education for parents in how to navigate through the different levels of athletics.
In closing, we do something called the oatmeal recipe. And you kind of touched base on some of the key points already, but I just wanted to reiterate. The three ingredients is skill development, education, and nutrition. So I want to call out, each one of them, just get your input. You just recently talked about skill development recently, but also, again, I want you to reiterate, because these three ingredients not only goes with basketball or sports, it goes with careers, occupations, jobs. And that's what I like about a lot of your things you say about, you always stress, hey, yeah, I'm a basketball player, sports is important, but skill development, academics are just as important. And I stress the same things. So excuse me for not, talking about that initially, because we're on the same page. And I know how that can be, because quick point before we conclude is that when I'm walking somewhere, right, and I'm 47, 48, I forgot how old I am, but somebody is always talking, hey, man, how was high school basketball? And that kind of gets me a little pissed off, because I'm like, bro, that's 20 years ago. Like, I'm a professional. I'm doing things now. So if you're not in tune to what I'm doing right now, then you're not in tune into me. But then I look at it from another angle, is that when we were playing and entertaining, that's the view they saw us in, right? That's what made them feel well, because how we can put a ball in the hole. But ultimately, that's not where we're all about. So that's why I want to make sure I get it, and I try to speak the same thing. So talk about skill development, how important it is to you.
It's very important. So the way that I look at skill development is if you're not focusing on growing and developing, then you're behind. Number one. And the skill development and growth doesn't come always from your coach or your teacher. What do I mean by that? So the coach will say you need to do 100 push-ups, 100 free throws, 100 jump shots, 100 right-hand dribbles, 100, and you only do that. I believe the best you could be is average, because you're doing what the coach is telling you or asking you to do, or the teacher is telling you to do and asking you to do. I believe those of us that are above average and exceptional, I know those of us that are above average and exceptional do what the coach, the teacher, our parents ask us to do, and then they got something that's special on top of that. So in terms of skill development, I think it's important to understand what you want your brand to be as a basketball player, in addition to what the coaches are wanting and asking of you. So for me, it was a complete basketball player. And how did I define complete? Is 3 steals a game, 4 assists a game, almost 10 rebounds a game and put up 26 points, and played their number one player. That's how I define a complete player. And so, I would ask the listeners out there, just if you want to be exceptional, you have to do what the coach is asking you to do, but you've got to do a lot more than that to be exceptional, which means, if they want you to run 15, gut sprints, you need to say, I'm running 20 in my mind, or I'm going to run 20. Because if you don't, you're just average, because everybody else on your team are going to run 15.
Right. If you want to be exceptional, do exceptional things, right?
That's it. That's it.
Education. We talk about education. How important is education to you? And right quick, when you talk from a basketball standpoint, what I hate to see, if you got 17 fouls on the board, and then, like you say, the player's jacking up the three-point shot. Well, why not you drive to get to the line and make your money at the free throw line? It's just different education when it comes to that. But it still can go to the career-wise too. How important is education to you, and how do you apply it?
Hey, well, okay, so that's a great example. So as a coach, are we coaching towards the analytics to help kids understand more of the game of basketball?
Right.
The funniest thing, and I say this, so like in math, in geometry, do we know what the block is for on the court? The big block, the next to where you stand for free throws. Do we know what that's for? Ask a player that.
I don't even know.
Well, that's where you stand to get ready for the free throw line. But
I thought you meant. I knew that. I thought you meant like this. Got you.
But no, that's what most people would say. But I would say that's where, when I post up and I straddle that block, I have an angle of attack to the backboard where I'm going to be 80-90% good on.
You're giving me chills, Steve. You know why? Because when I'm training, I teach my kids to drive inside of the block. Because if you go outside the block, you end up on the outside of the board.
Yes.
You drive inside of the block, even if you get fouled or pushed or hit, you end up in the middle of the block, we still got an angle to the basket. It's awesome.
Yeah. I'm going to say this one, because this is my best one, right? So people used to think that I had a very, very fast first step. And what I did have, and my uncle taught me this, I had a step that attacked your leg, your hip. So it looked like I was extremely fast, but it's something about physics that you can't go anywhere when I'm next to you. You can only go one place, and that's the other direction. And the same thing with the shot fake. Same thing with the shot fake. People think a shot fake is to get people to come off their feet. A shot fake isn't designed to get someone to jump. If they jump, that's fine. If they don't jump, I can tell you this, if they freeze, that's just as dangerous. You learn those things. You watch the NBA players. You watch the most skill developed basketball players. They're using pace, rhythm, head fakes, ball fakes, shot fakes, not to get you off your feet, but to freeze you. If you raise up, last time I checked, you can't move if you raise up. So this is biomechanics, right? And so understanding that there's a reason why we have that basketball, the size that it is, the rim, the backboard, the markings on the floor. You know, Michael Jordan did it the best. He went to certain spots on the floor.
And Steve, right before we went to the last one, nutrition, I want to just add something. When I'm teaching players again, but the mean and mode, all right, the mean is the average of 3 or more measurements, right? The height of the shot, the speed of the shot, and the length of the shot. So to make a layup might be a mean average of 2. As you move further back, a free throw might be a mean of 12, right? So you get it's the first quarter, and the athletes, they bounce when they shoot the free throw. Well, you might get a mean of 14 because you're full of energy. In the fourth quarter, you do the same thing. You might get a mean of 10 because you got less energy. But if you keep the mean the same, and that's why I don't like, well, shoot, bend your legs, bend your knees. I yell, change your mean, adjust your mean. Because if you bend your legs, depending on your energy level, it can throw your whole shot off. So, analytical things is very important when it comes to teaching. And that's why I'm happy to talk to someone like you that really get it and not really relying on athleticism so much. The last thing is nutrition. You were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say the one thing. This goes back to the mental thing. And I asked, I had a second cousin who was playing basketball in high school, and I said he's a jump shooter, spot up shooter, whatever. And I said, how many points are you going to put in tonight or the next game? He said, and I said, that's not good enough. So we're practicing, we're working on our craft, but what is our mental approach to that performance? And I shared with them, I knew when I was going to get my steals in the game before the game. It was because I was playing those scenarios. Like, they're going to think I'm not, on help side, and I'm going to, look that direction. They're going to throw that pass out there, and I'm going to tap with my left hand, and I know what dunk I'm going to do on the other end. That's another mental approach that I don't know that kids are using, but I question them. Say, okay, if this is your shot, how are you going to get your shot? What are you going to do to set that up to get those shots that you are, 80% good on in practice? So anyway, that's another mental piece. I think
that's a great piece, and to make that piece successful, you got to know the plays of your opponent and as well as your team in order to make those things happen. The last thing is nutrition. What I hate to see most is these travel tournaments, AAU tournaments, kids are eating McDonald's and Skittles and sodas. I think more direction need to come from the organization of having pregame meals or having snacks that's, energy fuel for these athletes. What's your take on that?
I think it's it is most important, So number one is it's a body. And so you could be, everybody is athletic. Everybody has this talent now, right? And so what I like to showcase is that the more that you're training your body, right? You're practicing on the skills development, but also you need to watch what you're putting inside of your body. And is it food with high in sugar? Do we need more carbs? You need more carbs and proteins when you're in between games, so it helps to repair your muscles. You need to drink a lot of fluid. And soda's high in sugar. It's false energy. You're gonna crash, and so you might cramp. It's very, very, very important, because if you really think about it, if you're gonna spend all this effort and time into that sport from a learning standpoint, and then you're practicing, and then you go out and put something in it that goes against that, that's not being efficient. And there are some stories out there. I want to give a shout out to Ray Allen. who I've never met in person, but I've read his story. Like he didn't eat, I think, a burger or something, or for the longest time ever. But he was serious about his body. Right. And so there are a lot of people out there that have kind of started to talk about that. And I challenge you, it's like, have the discipline or getting something that's healthier, and it's not necessarily that much more expensive. So it'll serve your body well. So, and I've been in the healthcare arena for many years. And so it's just, you can't play if you're not healthy.
Right. All right. That concludes our interview. But I got to ask you this question and touch base on it just because I love your take on the game. I was talking to Danny Johnson, who's played at Clemson. He transferred to College Charleston. But Woody made a good point about the European game that's transitioning into our game right now, right? And you made some good points about, and he talked about the game being positionless. So if athletes would adhere to what we're talking about and how to attack the game, you have to worry about being in position no more because you're going to be a player per se. What do you do? What do you take before you go? Just give me your take on what do you think about a European game infiltrating the U.S. Style of play?
Well, the first thing is back to some of the comments or things we were talking about is they practice 80% of the time and they play 20%. That's it. In addition to that, from a culture standpoint, because I lived over there and I played a couple years, right? So they don't have, in Germany, if you drove a BMW and ate in your car, that was like driving under the influence here. Okay, so they don't have drive-throughs for food. That you walk up and grab food in Europe. At least that's how it was when I was there. So their culture was more around health, being healthier, and so ours is more around that quick satisfaction. Right. And you can go to the drive-through, if you go to one drive-through, if it's backed up, you just go to another one. Right. It could be the totally different drive-through restaurant, but you just go to another one because it's quick and it's convenient. And things that are quick and convenient aren't always, in fact, most of the time, they're not the best for us.
If you got a BMW, you shouldn't be eating fast food anyway. That's my point.
There you go.
You got a $100,000 car and you're putting $5 in your body. Doesn't make sense to me. But this is my take.
Yeah, and hydrating and so those things are very important, and resting, and that's the other thing. And so as a coach and as a player, now you got to look at them. Say, look, they're not machines. They're athletes, right? And so you need rest. You got to figure out how to get your rest as a player on the court, when the spike, when the kind of you gotta know your body and your pace, and that's, I think that's what the professionals do exceptionally well. They know how to play 94 feet,
right? And
they know how to move. They don't waste energy. They're efficient with it, and they're taking care. And most of them are taking care of their bodies, and they're developing and learning the game more and more as they mature in that sport. So I think that's what I think I'm going to call the international players are doing. They're studying the game more and performing less. And I would say their skill development is quite impressive because of that.
Yes. Well, Steve, I thank you for your time, big guy. I think we can talk all day, but I know you got to get going. And I thank you for giving us your wealth of knowledge on this concept.
Thank you for the opportunity. God bless you, your family, and what you're doing is incredible work. And I hope any listener, there's something that you could take away from that to help you in your journey, whether it's in basketball and education. And I really appreciate this opportunity, man. It's great to see you.
Yes, sir. You too, big guy. We have have the rest of a good day.
All right. Be well. Right.
Peace. So there it goes, guys. Another one in the books. I want to thank Steve for coming on and giving us his wealth of knowledge of his trials and errors, becoming a student athlete and his successes in life. Mr. Harris has now created Jump Fit, a type of exercise program that helps athletes, not only athletes, but professionals, career, people that's just want to stay active. It's a very, very interesting concept. So you need to check it out. Don't forget to subscribe to the Triple Threat Podcast on your favorite listening platform. We are live on Apple, Google, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. That's Triple Threat spelled 3 R-I-P-L-E 3 H-R-E-A-T. Triple Threat Podcast. We'll be right back.
What Jermel is doing with the Day Foundation and the approach he's taking to help develop young athletes, first of all, getting them prepared from the academic standpoint, which, as you know as well as I do, Bobby, that's the most important element, to try to get them to eat healthy, to be able to train properly, to get the proper education, and then hopefully for those who are talented enough to have a chance to move on to perhaps even get a free education by going off to college. But I love what Jermel is doing. It's a wonderful program. Hopefully more people in the community will get behind it, and some of the businesses involved as well, to help sponsor this program, because these are the kind of things that every community needs, looking out for the best interest of the youth. The future of this country is in our youth, and everything that we can do to help prepare them better for that is absolutely wonderful. And I can't express adequately enough my admiration and respect for what Jermel is doing, and hopefully he'll get a lot of help from a lot of people.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Jamel President, and on Twitter at President Jamel. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast, as I'll be bringing you a new interview every month.